I'm Lieutenant Jerry Darren. I'm the left wingman, the number 3 pilot for the Blue Angels, and I'm one of the new pilots. I've only been on the team for about 6 months now.
Hello, Jerry. Can we talk?
Sure.
A little about the Blue Angels and what your mission is.
Absolutely.
Touch some on the Blue Angels' unique techniques. We're going to start with before you were in the Blue Angels. Obviously, you were a pilot in the Navy, but what were you doing before joining the Blue Angels?
Actually, before I joined the Blue Angels, I worked for a 2-star admiral. He was the chief of Naval Air Training, and I was his aide and flag lieutenant. Before that, I was an instructor in the F-18 at the Fleet Replacement Squadron in Lemoore, California. And before that, I did a 3-year tour in an operational F-18 squadron on the East Coast with 2 deployments on the Enterprise and Eisenhower.
Now, as an instructor, obviously you taught people a lot of different maneuvers, probably a lot of carrier landings.
Sure.
What did you learn in your 6 months with the Blue Angels that you did not know before when you were out in the fleet?
My experience with the Blue Angels, the thing I've learned the most is a whole new level of perfection and being very critical of yourself. You know, when we go out and perform a practice or an air show, 99% of the people in the audience think it's the greatest thing they've ever seen. But we come back, even if it was a pretty good show, we'll spend an hour and a half or 2 hours and we'll watch the show that we just flew on videotape, and we'll go frame by frame and look for very small deviations, and we're constantly striving for perfection. And not only in flying, but in being very punctual, in presenting ourselves well to the public. And even little trivial things, like if we walk out of the ready room and we don't have 2 pens in our pockets, we have to pay $5. And it looks like somebody stole my pen tonight, so I'm going to owe $5. Actually, it's in the pocket of my coat. So it's a whole new level of perfection that I had never tried to attain. And I think that's really one of the reasons why we can fly so close and look so good, is because we're just constantly setting the bar higher for ourselves.
Talk about being in the number 3 position. What is the hold on your team? What do you have to do? What are you responsible for?
Well, as a number 3 pilot, the left wingman, most of the guys that were formerly number 3 pilots like to say it's the hardest position in the diamond. And the reason that is because the number 2 pilot sets the formation. He decides how close or how far away we're going to fly particular maneuvers, and I have to match what set he decides to go with that day. So depending on the conditions, if it's bumpy or if it's smooth, if we're having a good day or a bad, he will set the formation. And so not only do I have to fly off the number 1 aircraft, the boss's aircraft, and focus on him, but I have to cross-check with the number 2 pilot and try to match his formation so the diamond looks symmetric. So that makes it one of the harder jobs. One of the unique things about the number 3 pilot, because it is one of the harder jobs, is that the 3 pilot, after his first year, moves to the number 4 position, the slot pilot. And as the slot pilot, he is the training officer for the entire Diamond and Delta, and also he is one of the few people who's able to move around in the event that one of the crew members is sick or has a problem with his airplane. The number 4 pilot can fill in for the number 2 or the number 3 pilots. So he has to kind of know every position very well.
Now, having been an instructor and teaching difficult maneuvers, personally, for you, what has been technically the most demanding maneuver for you to learn with the team?
I think for me, the hardest maneuver has been what we call the fan brake. If you listen to the narration, they call it the echelon parade. And it's funny, a lot of the maneuvers that look the most benign and the most graceful are really the hardest ones for us. And the reason that is we're trying to perfectly match our wings and the amount of power we have so that we look absolutely symmetric, and those are also the formations where we fly the tightest. So the left echelon, or the echelon parade, is one maneuver that any mismatch wings or any mismatch in power results in kind of a ripple effect, because we're all stacked up on top of each other. So if one guy makes an error or makes an input that he didn't want to make, it's going to have a ripple effect and cause the guys behind him to react. And we try not to react. We try to just fly through the guy in front of us all the way to the boss's airplane. But that's very hard to do, and it's hard to get used to that.
That's the most technical. The most demanding physically, what would you say is the most difficult, particularly on your body?
I'd say physically the most demanding is actually the last maneuver we do. It's the pitch-up brake, and we usually come in at about 400 knots of airspeed, and that is a sustained 7 to 7.5 G pull for 180 degrees of turn. It takes some getting used to, and even now when we've been flying 2 and 3 times a day, my G tolerance right now is probably about as good as it's going to get, and I still have to work very hard just to maintain proper vision throughout that maneuver. And if I find myself getting behind, the first thing I start to see is that my vision will start to get a little gray. I'll get a little bit of tunnel vision because the blood in my head is being pulled down to the lower extremities of my body. So physically it's a very demanding maneuver.
Describe for somebody, for instance, you do not wear the pressurized G-suits.
Exactly.
What do you do to counter that?
To counteract G's, just to explain what's happening when you're pulling G's, the blood in your head and your upper extremities are being pulled by the G-forces down to the lower extremities. Obviously, when you lose blood in your brain, it's not good. The first thing you start to lose is your vision, and ultimately you can lose consciousness. And if you lose consciousness, then obviously it's hard to fly the airplane, and that's a lot of people have been killed because of that. To counter that, what we do, well, first a lot of it starts with just getting a good night's sleep, staying hydrated, eating well, eating healthy. But all the guys on the team really are very good about going to the gym, lifting weights a lot, trying to stay physically fit, running, swimming, just cardiovascularly and physically fit. And that helps a lot. Now, when we're actually performing the maneuvers, what we do is we flex the muscles in our lower extremities, in our calves, our feet, our quadriceps, and really the most effective one is your buttocks, because that's one of your biggest muscles that you have in your lower extremities. And so you really squeeze all those muscles, and there's a maneuver that we call the hick maneuver, and it's kind of a breathing method that we use that allows us to take in air. Hick is what we say, because we're actually saying it in the cockpit, we say hick, and it forces you to expand your lungs and forces you to contract your muscles in your lower extremities, and that helps to force the blood back up to your head. So it's kind of an interesting maneuver that we do that worked.
With all those demands on you while you're on the job, what do you need to do that relaxes you when you're awake?
Actually, I get a lot of relaxation out of just going to the gym and working out. It kind of gets my mind off things, and it also obviously has a nice benefit of keeping us in good shape and physically fit so we can sustain the G's. A few guys on the team, myself included, are big fans of playing golf. So that's kind of a good low-impact way to kind of get away from it all. And it's kind of nice because as we travel around the country, we're often invited to play on some pretty nice courses, and some of the members think it's kind of neat to go play with Blue Angels. So it's kind of a give and take for both of us. So.
You're giving up a lot of days at home to be a part of this.
Sure am.
It's an all-volunteer squadron, but what is it that's rewarding for you? What is the trade-off? What do you find so rewarding for you personally?
I think right now, having been, just because of the fact that I'm a new guy and this is actually my first air show, I haven't fully been exposed to the air show and the circuit experience. But I can imagine in the future that probably the most rewarding thing for me is going to be going out to the high schools, which we do pretty much every Friday morning. And when we get to a new show site, we'll send out about half the team to various high schools in the local area. And we'll present a videotape to the high school students, usually juniors and seniors, present a videotape that shows a little bit about what the Blue Angels are all about. And then we'll get up on stage and we'll talk to them a little bit about our background, how we got into the military, how we ended up flying jets and flying for the Blue Angels, and hopefully to inspire kids, if not to join the Navy, to at least consider doing something a little bit different that maybe is going to help the country that has provided them with so many opportunities. And so if I can get some kids to think about, maybe I'll go do something different. Maybe I'll join the military, or maybe I'll volunteer in my community, do something to try to make the country better. And I think that's going to be very rewarding.
Speaking of the high schools, first of all, were you aware of the Blue Angels before you joined the Navy?
Of course, you bet. I first saw the Blue Angels, I think I was about 9 years old, at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska, a short distance from where I grew up. And I've always been very impressed with the Blue Angels. Just, and it's one of those things that I never really thought about becoming a Blue Angel. First thing I thought about doing was just getting in the Navy and then becoming a pilot. And then once I was selected for flight school, being selected to fly jets. And then once I got jets, being selected to fly F-18. And so it's just been kind of a gradual progression. Never really thought or looked far enough ahead to think that, ultimately I want to be a Blue Angel. Then one day I woke up and said, you know what, I've kind of got all the checks in the block right now. Maybe I'll give it a shot. And I did, and obviously it worked out for me.
So what do you remember about the first time that you went out in a Blue Angel uniform? Somewhere that you had been before in your khakis or dress blues. What did you realize that was different?
Well, obviously, all of a sudden you attain celebrity status. Not because we as individuals are famous, but because we're part of something famous. And for the past 56 years, prior members have made Blue Angels what it is today. And now it's our job to kind of maintain that level of excellence. So it was pretty eye-watering, and it was almost humbling because I didn't feel like I deserved it because I hadn't done anything yet. I was just kind of riding on the coattails of the Blue Angels that had been there before me. So it was an eye-opener and actually kind of put a lot of pressure on me and made me realize that, you know what, I've got a tradition to uphold here, and I can't screw it up for the guys that have done it for the past 56 years.
Speaking of the guys that have done it for the past 56 years, on sport teams, there's always legends with different football teams that will always be mentioned.
Sure.
In the Blue Angels, it's sort of more closed. People may not know all of your names over time, but within the organization, are there legends? Are there people that made their mark that are talked about within the Blue Angels?
Sure, absolutely. Probably the most notable is the first boss, the first flight leader, and he started the team back in 1946, a gentleman by the name of Butch Boris. At the time, he was a lieutenant commander, and he was tasked, I believe, by Admiral Nimitz to put together a demonstration team shortly after World War II, where the Navy, of course, did very well in the Pacific theater, and Admiral Nimitz wanted to get the word out about naval aviation, and Butch Boris was selected to start the team. And they had their first show at Craig Field in Jacksonville, Florida in 1946, and he started something that obviously is still going strong today. And the folks that I have talked to that have had a chance to meet him say that he is just a remarkable individual. And a lot of people owe him a great deal of thanks for doing what he did.
Coming from being an instructor, you're very aware of the plane. What was your biggest surprise the first time you hopped into a Blue Angels F-18?
The most unusual thing, not only as an F-18 pilot, but as an aviator in general, is these Blue jets, the Blue Angel jets. When we fly them, we attach a 40-pound spring onto the control stick. So just to fly straight and level, it requires 40 pounds of force backstick on the stick. And I could go on and on about why we do that. Basically, it minimizes the control inputs by the pilot, and that helps us to fly a really tight formation. But all through my training as a student, all the way to the point where I was instructing other students on how to fly, one of the things you try to do is to trim out any control forces so you can actually fly the airplane with just two fingers. And you can do that in a regular F-18, no problem. And that allows you to be really smooth, and you can focus on other tasks at hand. But in an F-18 that's got Blue Angels painted on the side, you've got this 40-pound spring on the stick. And let me tell you, it takes a while to get used to flying with that thing.